Guys, Drake just caught the biggest W of his career. He's taking a page out of the notebook of the love of his life, Rihanna, and his fellow Canadian artist, The Weeknd, because he's going to be touching the stage and headlining the 2025 Super Bowl halftime show.
Big as the Super Bowl.
However, just like Canada having their own team in the NFL, this was an absolute joke.
Big as the Super Bowl. Off the block.
Drake will not be performing at the Super Bowl, but instead, the artist who has just performed Drake's funeral back in May of 2024 has also decided to perform at the 2025 Super Bowl halftime show.
Let's get it.
And there's a lot we gotta touch on in this video, because with the moves that King Kung Fu Kenny, aka the Boogeyman, is about to make over the next few months, he's about to shake the game up in ways we've never seen before in history. But I gotta start off by asking, what did First Person Shooter do to piss Kendrick Lamar off this much? If you guys didn't know, Drake and J. Cole actually requested Kendrick Lamar to be on that song with them. Kendrick Lamar declined the feature, so Drake and J. Cole hopped on that song. They were talking about that link up being as big as the Super Bowl. They were saying the big three in hip-hop at that moment in time consisted of J. Cole, Drake, and Kendrick Lamar. And as Kendrick put it, they went on stage and they started hugging and kissing, and a couple months later, Kendrick came out, he said, F the big three, I don't care what you guys are talking about on that First Person Shooter record, it's just big me. And now he's basically telling Drake and J. Cole, look, you guys thought your link up was as big as the Super Bowl? I literally am the Super Bowl. And man, this might be a video for another day, but it's crazy how none of the disses that Drake threw out at Kendrick have aged well. They've all aged horribly. Drake was saying, you know, who really bang a set out there is YG. YG ends up coming out and performing with Kendrick Lamar at the concert where he's dancing on Drake's grave. Drake says Kendrick and his fiance are no longer on speaking terms, and they end up also dancing on Drake's grave in the Not Like Us music video. And at first he was talking about First Person Shooter and being as big as the Super Bowl, and that's what got us here today. That's what kicked off this legendary beef. That's what got Kendrick to say F First Person Shooter, F the big three, and you are not as big as the Super Bowl, because I literally am the Super Bowl. And it just shows how calculated Kendrick Lamar has been throughout this entire beef. Like, people are complaining that all the LA artists came out to his pop-out show and then Kendrick never retweeted their album or gave them a feature. I have a whole video on why that's a BS narrative, breaking that whole thing down. But look at what he's tweeted since April. Like, the guy is a silent assassin. He doesn't even tweet about his family. He doesn't tweet about his artists. All he tweets about is the release of new diss records that he dropped on Drake's head top and the announcement that he's performing at the Super Bowl. Meanwhile, Drake is out here dropping 100 gigabytes worth of content, desperately trying to come back, releasing like dozens and dozens of singles since this whole beef ended. And while Drake was busy trolling throughout this entire beef, Kendrick Lamar really stayed silent the entire time. He doesn't talk much, but his actions are most definitely louder than his words. And this is the biggest bomb I think that he's dropped so far. And for many reasons, which we're going to touch on in this video. Now, why this is so massive is because Kendrick Lamar will become the first rapper in history to do a solo headline performance at a Super Bowl halftime show. The last time, and I think the only other time, a rapper has ever performed and headlined the show was Dr. Dre back in 2022, where he brought out Kendrick Lamar, Eminem, Snoop Dogg. He wasn't a solo headliner. Kendrick Lamar is going to be the first rapper who's a solo headliner at this show. Now, if you guys are like me and you don't really keep up with football, I'm sorry, basketball is just a way more entertaining sport to watch. However, this is a super big deal because hundreds of millions of people watch the Super Bowl. So it's like, imagine as an artist doing a concert for 100 million people. Like, obviously the next day your streams go up like crazy, people go out and buy your albums, millions of new people discover who you are, so it's crazy to think that Kendrick Lamar could potentially drop Not Like Us at the Super Bowl and dance on Drake's grave for a third time in a row. Now, it's interesting to note that it was actually Jay-Z that was responsible for this decision of choosing Kendrick Lamar to be the halftime performer. Him and his company Roc Nation partnered with the NFL back in 2020, and since then they've been responsible for selecting who the performers are going to be. In 2020, they had Shakira and J-Lo with Bad Bunny and J Balvin. 2021 was The Weeknd solo. 2022 was Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, and more. Also, Kendrick Lamar was at that performance. 2023 was Rihanna. 2024 was Usher. He brought out Alicia Keys, Jermaine Dupri, Lil Jon, Ludacris, and more. Now, Kendrick is going to be performing at the 2025 Super Bowl show. What's interesting to note is that since Jay-Z started having a hand in deciding who's going to perform, there's been this interesting pattern where one year you get a headliner who brings out multiple guests, and then the following year you get just a solo headliner. So in 2020, we had Shakira, J-Lo, and a bunch of guests. Then in 2021, we had The Weeknd solo. Then 2022 was Dr. Dre, where he brought out a bunch of guests. 2023 was Rihanna solo. 2024 was Usher, where he brought out a bunch of guests. Now 2025 is Kendrick Lamar. So if this same pattern continues, then that means that Kendrick Lamar is going to be performing this show all by himself. However, if he decides to follow the moves he made at the pop-out show, then it'd be no surprise that he brings out a bunch of guests. There are some obvious guests that he probably will bring out. There's also some people that I think he might surprise fans with by bringing them out. We're going to touch on that very shortly in this video. But Jay-Z, who's usually pretty silent, actually had some things to say about Kendrick Lamar being the performer at the next Super Bowl. He said, Kendrick Lamar is a truly once-in-a-generation artist and performer. He has an unparalleled ability to define and influence culture globally. His work transcends music, and his impact will be felt for years to come. Kendrick Lamar also commented on being the next Super Bowl performer by saying, rap music is still the most impactful genre to date, and I'll be there to remind the world why. They got the right one. Now, Jay-Z's definitely got some good picks for the Super Bowl. Like, The Weeknd's performance was cool, Rihanna's was cool, Dr. Dre's was legendary, Usher's was cool. But many people, including myself, were a little bit confused why Lil Wayne was not chosen to perform at this year's Super Bowl. Lil Wayne is from New Orleans. He represents New Orleans more than any other rapper in history. He's by far the most legendary rapper from New Orleans. A lot of people, fans and other rappers included, agree with me that Lil Wayne should have been next year's performer. However, there's a deeper issue at hand that I think many people are overlooking, which is that Jay-Z, Drake, and Lil Wayne have had a very subliminal, very discreet, back and forth Cold War for a good part of the last 2 decades. Now, I know Jay-Z helped Lil Wayne with his taxes, he's done features with Drake. I have a whole breakdown dropping soon of the love triangle between Drake, Jay-Z, and Lil Wayne, but what you'll see in that video is that their friendship is fickle. They often go from shouting each other out, collaborating together, helping one another, to then dissing each other, whether it's subliminally or directly. I mean, we're getting into a little bit of conspiracy land here, but Jay-Z is very good friends with Jack Dorsey, who was the former CEO and founder of Twitter. He also acquired Tidal from Jay-Z, the same streaming platform that Drake famously rejected joining. And Jack Dorsey today tweeted out, "Big as the Super Bowl." He also retweeted Kendrick Lamar's song Meet the Grams when it first came out, and he said truth versus lies. He retweeted all of Kendrick Lamar's disses. After Kendrick dropped Not Like Us, Jack retweeted an old tweet of Kendrick's from June 16th, 2011, which, if you guys didn't know, is famously the day that Kendrick was in Toronto and met Drake for the first time. He's been retweeting Kendrick a lot. He's a good friend of both Jay-Z and Kendrick, and he's been very vocal of his support of Kendrick's W in the whole beef between him and Drake. It's also worth noting that 50 Cent and Drake have been seen a lot together lately, and 50 Cent is very vocal about the subtle issues between him and Jay-Z. Jay-Z didn't want him to perform at the Super Bowl back in 2022 when he chose Dr. Dre to perform, but Eminem said he wouldn't come out at that performance if 50 Cent was not invited.
Wait, Jay didn't want 50 at the Super
You didn't
Bowl?
know that? Yeah, he didn't
Well,
want.
I remember Eminem pushed for it.
Yeah,
I remember
Eminem pushed for it,
Eminem
yeah.
was like, I'm not going to do it unless 50 does it.
So it's possible that between Jack Dorsey tweeting all this stuff, between Drake clicking up with 50 Cent, who's been publicly clowning Jay-Z for years now, I have a whole video dissecting their relationship also coming pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. But between all that stuff, it's possible that Jay-Z has now again turned on Drake. Akademiks even said a couple months back that there's a big rapper who does not like Drake, who Drake has collaborated with in the past. People at the time thought it could be Travis Scott, but with these recent things going on, with Jay-Z inviting Kendrick to perform at the Super Bowl, it is very possible that this rapper who Akademiks was referring to was Jay-Z. Now, Akademiks also went on a massive rant about Kendrick Lamar performing at the Super Bowl, and we're going to touch on the explosive episode he had in just a few minutes. But speaking of rants, I think if Hurricane Chris wants to keep that same energy, then he's got to call out Jay-Z, man. Because if you guys didn't know, 50 Cent recently just put on a massive festival in Louisiana, and Hurricane Chris was calling 50 out for being a culture vulture, for not including enough Louisiana artists on the lineup and putting more money into the pockets of the Louisiana police than Louisiana artists. But now look at Jay-Z. He's choosing to exclude the GOAT of Louisiana, Lil Weezy, from the biggest stage in Louisiana. And maybe that's because Jay-Z knows Lil Wayne would probably bring out Drake during his performance. But maybe it doesn't matter what city an artist performs in, right? If you guys recall, most artists don't perform in their hometown during the Super Bowl. Beyonce didn't perform in Houston. Usher performed in Nevada. He's not from Nevada. The Weeknd's not from Tampa. Rihanna's not from Phoenix. Bruno Mars isn't from New Jersey. So typically the artists that are chosen to perform at the Super Bowl aren't necessarily chosen just because they're from the town that the Super Bowl is taking place in. However, Weezy has been talking for a long time about how much it would mean to him to do the Super Bowl in his hometown.
The Super Bowl is in New Orleans. I think it's in 2025 or something like that.
He's doing it.
I'm not sure.
Come on, man.
I will not lie to you. I have not got a call.
Hey, Jay, but I'm camera folk, Jay.
But we all praying, we praying, we keeping our fingers crossed. I'm working hard. I'm gonna make sure this next album and everything I do is killer. I want to just make it hard for them not to holler at the boy.
He's brought it up in at least like 3 interviews in the last year. And even his engineer today, this guy Fabian Marasculio, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, but if you guys have been following Lil Wayne for a long time, if you were on the Lil Wayne HQ forum fan site back in the day, like I was, you would know that Fabian used to interact with fans there. He's been really close to Lil Wayne for years now. He was updating fans when Lil Wayne kept pushing back Dedication 4 or the Carter 4. He went on Instagram today to express his disappointment in Lil Wayne not being selected as the performer for the Super Bowl. He said, confused, disappointed, angry, but most of all, inspired. We'll never again be in a position or have the GOAT in a position where we are at the mercy of someone else's decision. We will make the decisions. And there's many reasons why Lil Wayne should be the one performing at the Super Bowl over Kendrick, not just because it's his hometown, but if you think about it, the Super Bowl usually picks artists who are more so either legacy acts or at the later end of their career where we're kind of celebrating their legacy. And at this point in Wayne's career, he's been in the game for 3 decades now. He's lived through so many eras. He's had so many eras. He has so many hits. He would bring this performance through a bunch of different eras, right? He would go from the Hot Boys, Juvenile, all the Cash Money guys, to then bringing it to that 2007, 2008 mixtape and Carter 3 era where he was on a crazy feature run. He could bring out all the people he did features with, like Joel Santana, Dipset, or imagine seeing T-Pain on the Super Bowl stage with Lil Wayne doing Got Money. Then he would take it to the Young Money days with Drake, Nicki Minaj, and Tyga, letting them do a couple of their own hits or the hits that he has with them. Like, there's so many different exciting eras that he could take us through in his performance, and considering that it's in his hometown, he's been in the game for much longer than Kendrick. It does seem a bit odd that they would give it to Kendrick this year instead of Wayne. Also considering the fact that the next 2 Super Bowls are going to be in California. This one's in New Orleans. Why give Kendrick the one in New Orleans when the next 2 will be in Cali, his hometown, and skip over Wayne this year? Even Master P, a legend in Louisiana, acknowledged that Lil Wayne deserved to be a part of this performance. He went on Instagram to congratulate Kendrick, but he said, "Salute to Kendrick Lamar for performing at the halftime show at the Super Bowl. Well deserved. He's one of the hottest music artists in the world and has one of the biggest songs right now. As ambassador of entertainment in the city of New Orleans, I have to agree with the fans that Lil Wayne should be a part of this celebration as well. He's one of the greatest hip-hop artists alive, still relevant, and he's a New Orleans native. Let's not miss this cultural moment in the South. Life is too short. We have to give our legend their flowers while they're here. Change starts with us." Then he proceeded to tag Jay-Z. But again, maybe Jay-Z didn't choose Lil Wayne because he knew that Lil Wayne would bring Drake out during his performance. Maybe this is all a big conspiracy like Drake was talking about back in 2015 when he rapped, when the higher-ups have all come together as a collective with conspiracies to end my run and send me a message. I mean, there's definitely a message being sent if Kendrick Lamar was chosen by Jay-Z and Kendrick does end up going on stage and performing that Not Like Us record. But again, we're going to touch on whether or not he's going to do that record very shortly in this video. Allegedly, Jay-Z was not happy back in 2022 that Drake dropped a house album just a couple months after Beyonce, his wife, dropped a house music album. But while Drake was taunting Jay-Z a couple years back, now Kendrick Lamar's associate Punch from the TDE record label is now taunting Drake and Lil Wayne's longtime friend Mac Main by tweeting, "Yikes, LOL, yo yo," and then tagging Mac Main. Now, let's just leave this at Drake versus Kendrick, alright? We don't need Punch versus Mac Main. That's the last thing we need. But, I do get all this, right? This is Kendrick Lamar's moment, and rightfully so, because not only did he drop Song of the Summer, but he's also about to drop Album of the Year. Now, you might be asking yourself, how do we know that he's actually going to drop an album when sometimes he takes, half a decade in between albums? Well, there's many indicators pointing to a Kendrick album coming very, very soon. Firstly, he would not be performing at the Super Bowl if he didn't have new music coming out either before or after the performance. See, Kendrick has this pattern of all his major moves happening on very significant dates. Juneteenth was the pop-out show, Independence Day was when the Not Like Us music video has been released, and now Black History Month is when he's doing the Super Bowl. Speaking of significant dates, Drake's birthday is on October 24th, which coincidentally falls on a Thursday night, the night that new music is typically released. Many fans think that this is going to be the date that Kendrick Lamar finally releases his album, and I gotta say, if he truly does this, that might be one of the most legendary plays in battle rap history to drop an album on your enemy's birthday. And not only that, then go on and do a performance on the biggest stage in the world where you perform your diss record. And I mean, on Euphoria, Kendrick did tell us that he'd field goal punt Drake, so perfect opportunity. Daylight, who's a TDE artist, has also been sending out super cryptic tweets, which leads fans to believe he's referring to Kendrick Lamar's album. Firstly, on September 3rd, he tweeted out, "Y'all got a month to live. Save this tweet." That was September 3rd. It's now September 8th, the date that Kendrick Lamar announced that he's going to be performing at the Super Bowl. Right after that announcement was made, Daylight tweeted out, "That's not all. Stay tuned." Then he tweeted out the most cryptic one of all when he wrote, "Save this tweet. A missile will come from the southwest and many will apologize for their sins. Get food and water and can hood snow." I don't know what that means, but he also said, "And find shelter. You have been warned." It's worth noting that many fans believe Daylight also ghost wrote back-to-back for Drake. There's no confirmation on that though, but another significant date is the Grammys. The Grammys are scheduled to be a week before the Super Bowl. And we all know Drake's famous line when he said Kendrick just opened his mouth, someone go hand him a Grammy right now. Kendrick was the rapper to have the most nominations in one night at the Grammys of all time. Kendrick Lamar is very highly praised at the Grammys, except for when Macklemore obviously stole that Grammy for Rap Album of the Year from Kendrick in 2013. However, how legendary would it be, and how probable would it be, for Not Like Us to receive a Grammy, and then the week after, Kendrick goes and performs it at the Super Bowl in front of 100 million people? That leads us into an even bigger question, which is, can he even perform Not Like Us at the Super Bowl? I mean, it's an extremely corporate event, right? Obviously, you have hundreds of millions of people watching it. You got to be careful with the things that you say during your performances. And I mean, I can't imagine a show that's being broadcasted on national television or global television, whatever you would call it, hundreds of millions of people watching. Kendrick can't be out there on stage chanting certified PDF file or A minor. I mean, I could definitely see him doing the final verse of the record. I can also see him rewriting some lyrics and changing them for the performance specifically. He did this at the pop-out show when he performed Euphoria, and he changed a couple bars where he was basically requesting that Drake return Tupac's ring that he purchased. But aside from Not Like Us, what else would he perform? He's already done, I believe it was Alright, Humble, and Mad City at the 2022 Super Bowl performance. I could see him potentially doing Money Trees. I hope he does either Euphoria or 616 in LA. If you go watch the pop-up concert, those two songs, in my opinion, were some of the best performances we've ever received from Kendrick Lamar. The way he was kind of grabbing onto Ab-Soul while he was rapping from Drake's perspective in 616 in LA. Or when he took the stage and opened up the performance with an energetic, legendary, almost evil rendition of Euphoria. I'd love to see him perform it at the Super Bowl too, but again, it's going to be tough to get those disses off on a stage like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if Kendrick brought Kanye out to do his Like That remix. Kanye will probably start the show off by saying, "Yo, Dot, I got you." Then I'm sure he'll bring J. Cole out. Who knows, maybe even Rick Ross and Metro Boomin too. I'm kidding, I don't think any of those people are coming out. If anything, he'll keep it similar to the pop-out show, bring out a bunch of LA artists, possibly the Black Hippie Collective, or again, he might just do a fully solo performance. Now, a lot of people are pushing for Wayne to be one of the surprise guests, but I don't see him doing that to Drake. But take a look at Kendrick's most streamed hit songs of all time, and let me know in the comments which ones you think or you want him to perform on that stage. I'd actually love to see him do King Kunta as well. Now that I'm looking at this list, I think that'd be an awesome one with a live band. Family Ties would also be legendary, but now we gotta address this because people are saying that this is the Drake stimulus package working in full effect since Kendrick wouldn't be able to perform at the Super Bowl without the success of his beef. But I highly disagree, right? Because first of all, he's performed in the past at the Super Bowl already with Dr. Dre and barely got to do any of his hits. I think he did like 2 or 3 of them. Like, people seem to forget that Kendrick Lamar was a massive artist before this beef. I think Drake didn't even realize that, and that's why he felt so confident going into this beef with Kendrick. But Kendrick has had hits. Kendrick has had more successful years than Drake has when they both drop albums in the same year. Kendrick Lamar is a global megastar. From a success perspective alone, he deserves to be on that stage as much as a Bruno Mars does, or a Justin Timberlake, or The Weeknd. Secondly, he's been highly celebrated and highly praised by Jay-Z constantly throughout his entire career. Jay gave him his flowers early on. He gave him a feature on Kendrick's first album. And he's been pushing for more hip-hop artists to share this Super Bowl stage. So what better artist to do that than Kendrick Lamar? Plus, I think this decision was made months and months ago, possibly even before the beef. For a couple reasons, right? Firstly, I think that this decision to release an album was made way before the beef ever even started. There was multiple rumblings from within the industry that Kendrick was going to drop an album. He hasn't done it yet. Obviously, he's been taking his time with it. But there's been plenty of rumors from people within his camp that he's going to drop an album sometime soon. Now, what better way to promote that album than to perform it or perform in anticipation of it at the Super Bowl, especially if he's trying to get back into the mainstream. Now, also what's gone unnoticed is Kendrick dropped a trailer to announce that he's going to be performing at the Super Bowl. And in that, he was using this like machine that automatically like launches footballs. I don't know what the name of it is. Drop it in the comments if you know. But that same noise that machine was making was the same noise at the beginning of his 616 in LA diss record. A lot of people online were speculating what the sound was at the beginning of that record. People didn't know if it was a ventilator, if it was an engine, if it was the sound of an old movie projector. No one knew what it was. But let me play them both for you back to back, and you'll quickly realize that if you pitch the sound on the 616 in LA record down, like you make it deeper, it sounds the exact same as the football machine that Kendrick's using to announce that he's performing at the Super Bowl. Here's the noise from 616 in LA. And here's the noise from the new trailer Kendrick just dropped. Now, I say all this to say, he put that mysterious noise in the 616 in LA record to warn you in advance that he's going to be performing at the Super Bowl. What this means is this was decided months in advance, even before Kendrick released Not Like Us. So it's definitely not a valid argument for people to say that he would never be touching the Super Bowl stage if it wasn't for the success that he had from this beef with Drake.
As I was making this video, I also realized a really interesting thing about this trailer. So basically, again, it's just Kendrick Lamar using this like machine that tosses out footballs. And it seems like he's talking to a football player who's on the other side of the screen, catching those footballs that he's tossing out of the machine. And Kendrick basically fires one shot, and then he goes, there you go.
There you go.
Then he goes, let's see another one. And then he tosses another one. He goes, let me see two more.
Give me one more. Come on, two more.
And then he tosses two more. Now, why this is significant is because how many diss records did Kendrick release at Drake? He released 4. He released Euphoria, then 616 in LA, then Meet the Grams, and Not Like Us. And these 4 football tosses coming out of the machine are meant to represent those 4 diss tracks that Kendrick aimed at Drake.
Now, speaking of Drake and people trying to ride for him in the situation, Akademiks was really not happy that the moment of crip walking on Drake's grave is going to be extended until February of 2025, because after it was announced that Kendrick's going to be performing at the Super Bowl, Akademiks went on a massive Twitter rant where he said that thought of Not Like Us ringing off of the Super Bowl with the new Kendrick album dropping around that time and doing like 700K is devastating. All good for Kendrick, but damn, this little leprechaun really got the Hall of Fame Madden 2025 plays of death. Then he went on to say, Jay-Z and Roc Nation responsible for curating the Super Bowl halftime show. Remember that. The Super Bowl in New Orleans, and they let Kendrick Lamar perform over Lil Wayne. Jay-Z a legendary hater for that. Every rapper at the pop-out event with Kendrick texting him right now like, part 2 at the Super Bowl, big homie. Metro Boomin waiting by the phone for Kendrick Lamar to call him and invite him to the Super Bowl performance to get his 16 off with his little MPC. Jay-Z and Roc Nation responsible for curating the Super Bowl halftime show. Remember that. The NFL just gave Kendrick a global pop-out show. Jay-Z, I see you, my guy. You ain't low. Kendrick talking about round 2s. Kendrick's a petty guy. Sees everything and clearly hates the F out of Drake. Now, what he's talking about with the no round 2 stuff is the fact that a couple weeks ago, Drake dropped a bunch of records where he desperately tried to clean up his name, saying that he was ready for round 2. His therapist had to quit on him because he kept talking about beef. His ops tried to destroy him, but he's still up. He's still running the rap game. He gave features to all these guys who now hate on him, blah, blah, blah. Then he went on his fake Instagram account called Plot Twist, and he posted a clip where he was basically saying that he's going to come back and win round 2. So with all these new records, with this new kind of, I guess you could call it confident energy that Drake came with, where he was basically telling the world, like, they tried to kill me, they didn't kill me, I'm coming back, I'm still talking about beef. And then he's saying we're going to win round 2. People assumed that he was ready for war again. And people were wondering what Kendrick's next move was going to be. In this clip, when Kendrick Lamar announced he was performing at the Super Bowl, he simultaneously shut Drake up by saying, only one opportunity to win a championship. No round 2s.
You know it's only one opportunity to win a championship. No round 2s. Let's get it.
essentially telling Drake to stop doubling back. He lost and this is done and over with. The fight has already ended months ago. And Pusha T seemed to agree with this because he posted the quote on his story and he said, "This is true." Pusha T was another one of Drake's famous ops who dissed him on the story of Adidon, which was so ruthless that Drake decided to step back and not diss Pusha T any further, basically ending the beef, but then continued to sneak diss Pusha T for months and years after that in different songs. Pusha T was like, "I'm not going to respond to you because your verses are stale, your disses are stale, and you didn't want to actually go head to head. You bowed out of the beef, so your subliminals mean nothing. All these little subtle shots to try to egg me on to drag me back into this beef when you already bowed out of it are worthless, and they're not going to garner a response from me because I already won that championship. There's only one opportunity to win it. There's not a round two." But Rihanna did like Kendrick's post where he announced he was performing at the Super Bowl, and with the jealousy and anger Drake probably had in his heart after seeing that, he is probably still ready and determined for this round two, and Akademiks even, I guess, kind of confirmed this by saying that round two will proceed. So maybe Drake will continue dissing Kendrick. I can't see what Drake could possibly say unless he really comes out desperately trying to egg Kendrick on with new accusations. I can't see what he could do to garner another response from Kendrick. It seems like Kendrick has moved on and is now focusing on his next album release. Like, this Super Bowl performance is an obvious step in his promotional rollout for his next release. However, who knows, right? There could obviously be some sneak disses along the way. He could reflect and address this entire beef, the outcome of it, what he was actually trying to accomplish in, the quote-unquote elimination of Drake, as Kanye would call it. But like, even people in the Drake Reddit are saying that Drake is so stupid for even responding to Kendrick in the first place. They are aware it was a mistake, and it's an even bigger mistake to continue going at him. But what do you guys think? Are we going to get a response? Is this beef going to get heightened to new proportions that we've never seen? Is Kendrick Lamar going to perform Not Like Us at the Super Bowl? Is he going to bring anyone out? Is he going to release an album soon? Is Drake going to release an album soon? Is Drake going to try to instigate and start that round two? Who's going to win that round two? What do you guys want to see next? Let me know in the comments. Are you excited for the Super Bowl performance? Appreciate you if you stuck to the end. Drop a little like, subscription, and comment what you want to see, and I will catch you guys in the next one.
You know, it's only one opportunity to win a championship. No round twos. Let's get it.